Hello everyone, and welcome to Continuing the Conversation, live from the 2012 APWA Congress Expo floor. My name is Emily Barta, and thank you and welcome back for joining us. Next to me is Kristel Riddervold, and Kristel is the Environmental Administrator at the City of Charlottesville Department of Public Works. And Kristel had a session this morning entitled Sustainable Energy Management Strategies That Work, and now we're going to talk more about it. So Kristel, welcome. I understand you had a very popular session this morning. Tell me all about it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we had a nice filled room of folks who seemed very interested not just in the technical side or the cost side of energy, but what does it mean in a municipality? How do you get started? What are some of the tools? And actually part of our conversation went to, and how do you use the successes and the examples and the good stories you have locally and influence or inform your community?
Well, it sounds like it's a very hot topic in the public works industry, but we're talking about sustainable, which has a definition that is different depending on the industry, right?
Yeah.
So what does sustainable mean in the public works industry?
Well, I don't think it's unique to the public works industry, but I think it's incredibly important to emphasize that sustainability is actually a very balanced approach to projects and programs, and it's not just about green projects, it's not just about the painting things green, but it truly is about balancing the environmental impacts, the financial and economic impacts, and then ensuring that community goals are balanced and well met. It's critical. And I think Public Works, through the Center for Sustainability and a lot of the other presentations that I've seen and heard, it is evolving to an understanding that these are not conflicting goals. These are actually very overlapping goals, and at the end, if we find that sweet spot, we do end up doing the best projects.
Well, that's what we're all here for, is to do the best projects for our community, right? If anyone at any time has any questions, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you. We'll make sure to get your question answered. If you have any stories you would like to share with us, we would love to hear about it. For everyone joining us online, be sure to go to that lower left-hand corner of your screen, click on that Q&A button and submit your question or tell us your story. And no matter where you are located or how you are participating in 2012 Congress, be sure to join the conversation on Twitter via that hashtag APWA Expo. All right, so in your session, what are some of the topics or the statements that you focused on that got the most positive response?
There are a couple things. There's an underlying fact that you can't manage what you don't measure. So we spent a lot of time talking about establishing a baseline, using real utility data, not kind of cherry picking the buildings that you think are going to make your program look good, but being very honest about the full portfolio of buildings, being very honest about needing a year's worth of data, recognizing that certain goals are influenced by expanding the number of buildings that you have or weather influences, and so there are tools out there that enable you to incorporate some of those factors. I know one of the tools we talked about was the EPA Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's a free tool that's available to basically facility managers across the country, and it allows you to enter information. It allows you to make comparisons of your buildings against like buildings. It really is a very simple tool, and it's a great starting point because you're right, it seems daunting to start with energy management, and it seems expensive, and half the time we spent talking about truly financial investments in infrastructure upgrade and energy retrofits and new buildings, but we did spend half the time talking about management strategies and how your maintenance staff could be more effective or be accountable or be linked to the buildings that they have responsibility for. And then there's, the critical fact that buildings are a system, and if you think about ductwork and insulation and windows and doors and roofs and all that, and then you acknowledge that those buildings have occupants in them, it's another big piece of how we deal with energy management.
So now that tool that Kristel just mentioned is the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It is a free tool. The best way to access it is via an online search. So feel free to check that out. It is free and use it. It sounds very, very beneficial.
Yeah, it's very user-friendly.
Now, user-friendly is continuing the conversation as well. So do we have any questions here on the floor? What would we like to know? Was anybody in Kristel's session this morning and had a follow-up question? Or were you not able to attend her session and disappointed that you weren't able to be there? Could you think of anything that pops into your head? Let us know by raising your hand. And if anybody at home has any questions about sustainable energy management strategies that work, go to the lower left-hand corner of your screen and click on that Q&A button to submit your question. All right, now you talked about half the presentation was about the financial impact, and then half the presentation was about more cost-effective type things. You know, let's just start with the elephant in the room. A lot of this stuff costs a lot of money, but what is the ROI, or what is the significance, or why is it still important?
I think the reality is if we are willing to invest in the assets that we have, in the building stock that we have, and we're good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, the reality is every dollar we save by making our buildings high performing and efficient are ongoing savings. They're not just one-time project savings. So it is a very long-term commitment and approach. The city of Charlottesville, we established some baseline information for the year 2006, and we've recently been updating, collecting data and doing a check. And our 2011 performance is about 32% better. We've increased, we have 6 additional buildings. Our power rates have gone up by, I think, 8%. So in light of that, we're seeing a 32% reduction in our energy consumption and about a 9% reduction in cost. That's really powerful. Our senior management likes it, our electeds like it, our community likes it, and one of the challenges is saying if we can do that in a small portfolio of municipal buildings, the commercial sector can do it, our homeowners can do it, and then as a result we see in a community a much different shift in energy that's in the cost of energy.
Well, that brings up a really good point. Energy management is not just in the public sector. It's in the community. There are lots of energy management solutions that we as individuals can do on our own, in our home, in the public. What are some of those tips or tricks that you shared?
You know, one of the philosophies we really try to emphasize is the correct order of things, what we call the loading order of energy work, and it is crucial to make sure that the basics like insulation and duct work and those types of things are addressed before you invest in an expensive renewable energy system on top of your building. Solar photovoltaics are very expensive. If you put them on a building that leaks like a sieve, it's a really difficult ROI story. If you invest in those lower cost strategies, many of which are able to be provided by local contractors, then a few years down the line you can actually afford the solar system that's going to provide that renewable resource to your building. So again, it's thinking about what's the logical thing. Windows and doors look really great, but if your building doesn't have insulation, if your ductwork is old, if your mechanical system's been chopped up, if your building automation systems aren't programmed and running like they are, it doesn't matter how pretty your windows are.
Yeah. Does anyone here have any success stories, any case studies that they were a part of in their own community that they would like to share with all of us? If anybody at home has any great tips or tricks, we would love to hear them via that Q&A button at the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And if we don't have anyone right here that has a quick question or comment, it looks like we have someone from home that does. Thank you, Dana.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. We've been talking, and even they referenced the earlier session, who kind of drives these projects for your city? Do you put a committee together? Does it take a champion? How do you kind of get these things done in Charlottesville?
I think in Charlottesville we have sort of multiple influences. So the desire to see cost savings is certainly promoted by our budget office, by our council, our facilities maintenance group, which is part of Public Works. They are the folks who get called every time stuff breaks, so it's in their best interest to be proactive. We're seeing a shift from a Band-Aid approach, an emergency-driven kind of reactive program, to a proactive program that saves us a lot of money. In Charlottesville, there is a community commitment to environmental impacts and environmental stewardship, so the co-benefits of this kind of work, which do include reduced emissions, which do include air quality benefits, which do include comfortable homes and buildings. It isn't just about the pollutants, it's about occupants who are happier in the spaces that are high performing. So there are a lot of drivers for it.
Was there anything that you learned from giving your session this morning?
I have to say I was a little surprised that some of the tools are still unfamiliar to a lot of people, and it's still daunting. It has been for years been daunting to kind of enter the fray of energy management, but I think if we start thinking about occupancy sensors, if we start thinking about smart use of our buildings and consolidating different programs, if we think about ensuring that the occupants understand the purpose behind some of the work that's being done, typically you find a lot more cooperation and willingness to kind of go for a common goal. We see that we've spent $1.8 million on an energy performance contract, which did involve a huge number of buildings, a lot of infrastructure upgrades, but the cost savings are then afford us to invest in additional energy efficiency work. So it's kind of doing your own mini loan program, so it pays back locally.
So perhaps an upfront investment cost, but that will result in cost savings over time and over a long time, it sounds like.
Sure, but I would not say you've got to kind of jump into the deep end. There's a lot of ways where you can tackle a single building, you can tackle sort of the least performing building, the building that's behaving the worst in a way, and once you are able to achieve some substantial measurable improvements, then it really seems easier to make the pitch that strategy or that approach works for all the buildings. And Energy Star program gives a very simple rating scheme, so you can also start with a building, kind of establish a numeric reference rating for it, do the improvements, monitor the building over time, and watch it improve. So it is kind of a rewarding process.
So would it be accurate to say that one of the ways that sustainable energy management strategies work is by not looking at completely and totally redoing an entire community, but starting small and focusing one project at a time?
I think yes, but at the same time, if you want to achieve measurable results in a community, you have to scale up the work. So awareness, resources, incentives, tools. We have a local nonprofit that really pushes energy efficiency and facilitates that with our residents and our businesses. It's a partnership with the city. We've got a partnership with our local credit union where we use the energy efficiency conservation block grant dollars to buy down interest rates on loans specific to energy efficiency loans. So it really, it takes a community to tackle energy management if that's the scale you're thinking about. Otherwise, it does take a champion to tackle one building at a time, but it's worth it.
It is worth it. And we, as public works officials, know how important the bottom line is, right? So do you think that most organizations could benefit from a focus on energy management?
I might turn it around and say I'd challenge any organization to say why they wouldn't.
Just that easy.
I think so.
We got to start at the
it's not
beginning.
that easy, but...
Well, no, but I mean the solution, the starting of the solution.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions for Kristel about sustainable energy management strategies that work? Or do we have any success stories that we would like to share, or any tips or tricks or tools that you have utilized that you would like to share with the group? And if anyone at home has anything to contribute, do so via that Q&A button that you see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And of course, as we all know, APWA is on Twitter, and the hashtag for the 2012 Congress and Exposition is hashtag APWA Expo. So, anything else? Anything else? No. What's one last thing that we can say about what makes sustainable energy management strategies work?
There are tiers of people who have to buy into it, and there are tiers of people who will be thrilled to be associated with it. It's very difficult to do energy management and not achieve some successes, so it becomes a little bit of a kind of an obsession, because once you start seeing improvements in the building and recognizing that it can be replicated, there are a lot of lessons, there are a lot of strategies that are unique to certain areas, so I'd encourage folks to find their regional acquaintances and peers who do this kind of work, because, share stories and swap them, because Arizona and Alaska and Virginia are very different, but the approach in the beginning of collecting data, setting a baseline, monitoring what you do, being able to account for the outcomes, I think it's going to pay back.
It absolutely will pay back, and we all can learn from each other. So, Kristel Riddervold, thank you so very much for joining us and talking to us about sustainable energy management strategies that work. Now, Kristel mentioned a variety of tools, two of which are the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. That's a free tool. And also the Department of Energy has a technical assistance program. So feel free to do an internet search on either or both of those terms for more information. And stay tuned, because coming up next at 2 p.m. Pacific time, we are going to talk with Benjamin Jordan from the University of Wisconsin-Madison about what else? Winter.
Oh, good.
They have a lot of winter in Madison, Wisconsin. So Benjamin's going to talk to us about consider winter maintenance in transportation design. We will see you back here at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you so much.